It may be technically the end of the greatest recession since the Great Depression, but that doesn't mean the poverty rate has improved. According to recent findings, the ranks of the poor rose in almost U.S. states and cities last year. Austin Nichols is an expert in U.S. poverty studies.
Well, it's about as bad now as it has been since poverty began being measured, essentially, in the mid-'60s. About as bad in official terms.
Poverty levels increased in 2010, with nearly 7% of people having incomes that were no more than half of the federal government's official poverty threshold. That's up 6.3% from 2009.
The unemployment rises after the recession has begun, and then poverty rises after that. So there is a contraction of employment, and then after that we see an increase in poverty, because as people lose their jobs, they lose their jobs throughout the year, and then poverty is based on annual income. Then next year we see poverty increasing.
Poverty ran deepest in Washington, D.C., where 1 in 10 people had incomes less than 50% of the threshold. This is the Occupy movement in McPherson Square in Washington, D.C. It's turned into a campground of sorts and somewhat of a safe haven for some of the area's poor. As demonstrators point out the growing disparities between the very rich and the poor, sites like these have often become support groups for the poverty-stricken. Some who live homeless and shelterless are able to have access to food, water, and basic medical supplies.
I'm disabled. For one thing, I want to work, but if I can go back to work, to be able to get me a place to live, then live from benches to posts to wherever I have to lay at.
The future for the nation's poverty rate isn't likely to improve anytime soon. As Nichols points out, that is often the last factor to turn around.
It will be like this for a while. Even if the job market recovers, poverty will still remain high for a while.
And the numbers of the poverty-stricken threaten to grow. People currently receiving unemployment benefits could lose them by February next year if an extension isn't enacted by Congress by the end of this year. Colin Campbell, Press TV, Washington.